Hi. In this PowerPoint, we're going to be looking at some different examples of still lifes containing shiny objects. First, we're going to be looking at some examples by famous artists, um, and then we're going to be looking at some student examples. And just in case you weren't aware, a still life means an arrangement of objects, usually small objects. They're often on a table. So if you use this, if you hear the term still life in art, that's what it means. The object sitting still on a table. Audrey Flack is really well known for her still lifes. And she works in a style known as photorealism. So this is actually not a photograph here. This artwork is actually a painting. But what Audrey Flack does is she takes a photograph of objects in front of her, and then she uses that photograph as a reference for her painting, meaning that her painting looks as real as a photograph. That's why it's called photorealism. And she often works with shiny objects in her paintings that she does. And I think one of the reasons she's so interested in shiny objects is because they have all these really intricate, detailed, beautiful reflections, which if you do a nice job drawing or painting them, they can help your painting look incredibly realistic and impressive. So these are all pieces by Audrey Flack. They're all paintings done by her. And again, she loves painting things like shiny glassware, the shiny silver parts of the tubes of paint. So I think in art, what we sometimes do is when we want to do a drawing of something realistic, we think to ourselves, oh, I want to pick something really simple to draw realistically because then I'll do the best job. But actually, by picking objects that have more intricate details, you can actually end up doing a better job at tricking the viewer's eye into thinking that they're real or impressing the viewer by thinking that they're real. So in a sense, it makes your life easier because we're going to learn a few tricks in this unit that help you make the shininess of objects look really realistic. This is another artist who works with reflective objects a lot. Her name is Janet Fish. Both of these artists are fairly contemporary artists, meaning they're creating work today. Janet Fish uses a lot of repetition in her paintings, right? So you can see the repeated olive oil cans, or bottles rather. You can see a lot of unity in this piece with the repeated colors of purple and blue and yellow throughout the piece in different areas. And Janet Fish is not a photorealistic artist. So even though her pieces are still realistic, you wouldn't think they were an actual photograph. That it's okay with her that you know that they're paintings. I think hers are more about the designs, the colors, the compositions of her pieces. And again, that you see that repetition with the 3 jars of the pickled vegetables. But I just love her work. These are all Janet Fish. So this is a great example of one that's just all about the different reflections in these glasses of water. And she loves painting. She has a whole series of pieces of fruit wrapped in cellophane because she loves painting the shininess of the cellophane. Another photorealistic artist is Ralph Goings. He does photorealism, but these paintings of his that you'll see are actually really large scale. So again, these are not photographs, these are paintings that he has done. And he often does paintings of food or condiments that are really kind of typical American food, like donuts, ketchup, salt shakers. So very reminiscent of food you would see in American diners. And this is a close-up of one of his paintings, but just to see the amazing amount of detail that he puts into his work. So for your art project, you are going to be working with black and white charcoal to draw shiny objects. These are pieces, the first few are pieces I found on the internet, which are really nice examples, and then we'll also be looking at some really nice student examples. But you could consider using repetition in your composition of objects that you set up. So repeated forks, repeated spoons, for example. Some other things that I think you see going on here is you can see the shadows are darkest under the objects, getting lighter towards the edges. You see a full range of value in terms of really dark darks in some areas and pure white highlights in other areas. Same with this one. Really dark darks and really light lights are what make objects look shiny. So we're going to be really focusing on that when we do our drawings. This drawing is done on a darker background, which I think really helps the white reflections of the objects really stand out. And so when you do your drawings, we're going to do a background similar to this one. You've either got a piece of paper that is gray or kind of a grayish blue or kind of a neutral brownish color. And the reason you have that color of paper to do these drawings on is because then the shiny white and the dark blacks and grays really stand out against that medium value of the background. You could do really small objects for this drawing, like the nail clipper, for example. These I think might even just be little parts of machinery. I'm not really sure. But even if you do small objects, you're going to fill most of your page with them. So keep that in mind. If you do really small ones, you're going to draw them larger in life. You're going to really zoom in on them. You could take on something incredibly ambitious, like this one of drawings of kettles and pitchers and things. I know this wasn't my student, but this is a high school student artist who did this one. Here's a very close-up cropped-in drawing that I just love. I think this one was actually created maybe with some watercolor paint also. Here's one that I think is part of a car part. We got that shiny chrome going on. So as you think about what objects you want to include in this, really keep an open mind to anything that is shiny could work well. It could be close-up of sink faucets, close-up of machineries, things from tool sheds, silverware. You have lots of options. Again, here's another close-up of some sort of technical machinery parts. These are just some other examples, although these are done with paint and it brings a little bit of color into it, which we won't be doing. But here are some student examples. This is a really nice example. The only thing that's different in terms of this one is I would like you to do more than one object. So this is a great just technical use of shading. They have the darker shadows fading to light, really nice detail on the different parts of the spoon, but I would like you to have more than one object in your still life. So this would work fine. You have the spoon inside the cup, so you have two objects interacting. And here's three objects interacting. One of the things you're going to do when you set up your objects is make sure that all of the objects are touching or overlapping somehow. So you don't want to have just three objects or two objects spread out so that they're not touching or overlapping on your picture plane. It's going to create a more dynamic, interesting composition if they're all touching in some way. The other thing you can consider, which this one does, is do you want your composition to be cropped at all? You can see the paint tube and the spoon are both cropped off the edge of the paper, which can also help with a dynamic composition. Here's another person that cropped the edges of her fork and spoon off on either edge. And here's one. This one, I like how it's cropped, but I think it could be a little bit more balanced if there wasn't quite as much empty room up here, although overall still a really strong piece. Here's a really nice example, and look how smooth of a job they did with their shading. So we're going to be talking about how to create these smooth transitions of values. Also, if you're drawing something that's glass, like a see-through object, that's going to have much lighter values overall than if you're drawing a metal object like a spoon. Is going to have more dark values. So as I mentioned, the first thing you're going to do in the next video is you're going to be drawing a composition of objects, meaning an arrangement of objects. So right now I want you to go search around your house for shiny or clear glass objects that you might want to include in a composition. I'd like you to have at least 2 objects in it. 3 would be even better. Remember these important steps to drawing a still life, meaning that closer objects are lower on the paper. Just like with the geometric forms, things that are closer are lower on the paper. Things that are farther away are over up. Remember that things can overlap, and then obviously you wouldn't see the part of the object that is behind the object in front of it, so you'd want to erase that line. And you also want to think about proportion. So for example, when you're measuring an object, you want to make sure that that you look at how big is one object compared to another object. Is it half as big? Is it twice as big? And we'll talk more about all of this in the next video too. So go ahead, find some objects that you want to set up for your still life, and in the next video, we'll get started.